I don't think anyone's really got an issue with the Syrian refugees themselves. It's more a case of the people that would come across with them, because there's not adequate checks in place to check who's actually coming through with them.
Well, I've dealt with a very large number of refugee cases over many years as an MP and a member of the human rights groups in Parliament. I tell you, getting refugee status is very difficult, and there are very detailed checks done on anyone applying for refugee status. And I've been dealing with these cases ever since the 1970s, when I was supporting refugees from Chile, many of whom have now gone back, and oddly enough, some of them still keep in touch with me. The idea that you can just walk in a country and announce you're a refugee and get status is far, far, far from the reality of it. The numbers who actually get refused, sadly some of whom get deported or deported to a third country, is very great indeed. I think we should also reflect for a moment that somebody that's seeking asylum is a human like us, as I said, but also they're here to make a contribution. Many of our doctors, many of our scientists, many people that are making a huge contribution to this country came in as refugees. The iconic car, the Mini, was designed by Alexis Agonis, who was himself a refugee.
A gentleman here wants to come in on the same issue, yeah?
Those detailed checks.
What's your name, sorry?
Jordan.
Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
Detailed checks you just outlined. What about the people that are being discovered in the back of lorries that we see on the news daily? Are they, they're not going through checks and they're getting in?
Who's not going to be checked, sorry?
The refugees that are coming in on the back of lorries that we see on the news, so they're not getting through the extensive checks, they're just coming across.
Well, at the point when they apply for asylum status, yes, they are. And I have met some people that have just arrived in this country from Afghanistan by a series of lorries because they had been translators for the Western forces in Afghanistan, were no longer safe to live there, weren't allowed to leave or given advance entry to any Western country, so came in by an illegal route. Everything we do has consequences, and so yes, they are given those checks, and if we want to make ourselves safe, then you try and reduce the tension at the source. Hence my very strong view that there should be much greater effort put into bringing about a political settlement in Syria and a political settlement in Libya. There's something strange that's going on at the moment. Hundreds of people have died trying to cross the Mediterranean or trying to cross the sea into Greece. Has it had headline coverage day after day after day? No. It's had minimal coverage. It's had some coverage more lately, but this isn't a new thing. This has gone on for several years. I just think we need to recognise the humanitarian disasters right on the shores of our continent.
Okay, there's just one gentleman on this issue here. Can we get round to him?
I find it absolutely fascinating how you say the EU and Germany have done really well, especially Germany, yet it was Angela Merkel who made the worst policy ever by saying everyone can come, and that has caused people to think are going to get a better life, and they've risked going over the Mediterranean and even drowning as a consequence of that really bad error, which I think is probably the worst I've ever seen since I've been alive. So I think shocking person.
I think hers was a human response and a feeling that many people, particularly Jewish people from Germany, were denied a place of safety in the 1930s by the cold-hearted attitudes of many other countries. And they died as a result. Quite rightly, we praise the Kindertransport and those that got through. Absolutely. Tens of thousands of didn't, and they ended up dying in the concentration camps. I think Angela Merkel was actually trying to make a humanitarian response. She assumed, I mean, I've never met Angela Merkel, I've never had this discussion with her. I would look forward to doing it. I think behind her assumption was that the rest of Europe would be prepared to play its part and provide a haven for a proportion of those Syrian refugees. That started to happen, and then suddenly the rise of the right in Germany, the rise of the right in other places stopped all that, and we ended up with the, quite frankly, appalling situation we have at the present
So, Mr.
time.
Corbyn, you think both that there should be unlimited freedom of movement in the EU context and also more refugees?
I think
there's not a great deal of public support for that, is there?
No, what I'm saying on the refugees is deal with the problem at source, because actually being a refugee isn't necessarily a solution to your problems. It might be a last resort because of the dangerous situation you're in, which is why I keep repeating the point about the question of our arms sales to people, the questions of our foreign policy. So I think that's quite important. On the freedom of movement, if we're in one market, yes, there is going to be freedom of movement of labour as well as capital. My point is that working conditions are different across Europe. There are some basics, such as the holiday, such as the maternity and paternity leave, and those kind of working time directive. Those things are important. But we have a situation where some very greedy companies import their entire workforce from a low-paying economy, somewhere in Central Europe, bring them lock, stock and barrel to a higher-paying country, Holland, France, Germany, Britain, and pay them at the local rate. So the scandal of what's going on at Shirebrook with Sports Direct is an example of all of that, which is why the proposal by the European Union Commission for a posting of workers directive, which would mean that any company employing people must pay the appropriate rate for the country concerned and respect local agreements such as the construction disagreement. Those things are quite important, and also ban the advertising of jobs in this country solely outside this country.
Wouldn't it be easier just to,
they should be advertised locally to everybody here as well as anywhere else.
Would it not be easier just to leave?
No, it wouldn't be easy to leave, because I think the problems then are economic,